Welcome to the Caregiver Relief Podcast. I'm Diane Carbo, RN, your host, and today's episode is about a form of dementia many families have never heard of until it turns their world upside down. Frontotemporal dementia doesn't begin with memory loss. It often begins with changes in language, behavior, and personality, and it's frequently misdiagnosed for years. My guest, Nancy Treaster, lived this reality as both a spouse and a caregiver. Her husband, Kim, was diagnosed with FTD in his late 50s, and Nancy spent 9 years navigating a disease that slowly took away communication, connection, and familiarity. This is a conversation about love, loss, resilience, and what caregivers deserve to know before they're in crisis. This episode is sponsored by myvitalvault.net, your all-in-one life organizer for aging adults and caregivers. It's designed to help you securely store your essential legal, medical, and emergency information in one easy-to-access place. Because when a crisis hits, being prepared can make all the difference. Join our Caregiver Relief community, a warm, welcoming space where you can connect with other caregivers, ask questions, share stories, and find support from people who truly understand. Visit community.caregiverrelief.com to join now. Because caregiving is one of the hardest and most meaningful things you'll ever do, and no one should have to do it alone. And if this episode speaks to you, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Every click helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, resources, and hope. Nancy, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so excited that you're here because I have worked with many clients in a senior behavioral health unit with this diagnosis, and I know how devastating this is to families.
Well, I'm so glad that you're taking the time to raise it up, because it is a different journey, if you will.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the fact that we're going to get to talk about it and maybe help some people.
Yeah, I am too, because it happens when you're young a lot of times, and it's just devastating. So before we talk about the caregiving and your journey, can you tell us a little bit about who Kim was before FTD and how would you want people to remember him?
Absolutely. And there's some irony in that, actually, because of the way FTD progressed for him. But Kim was a very gregarious, outgoing, talkative person, extroverted. People would laugh and say between the two of us, you couldn't get a word in edgewise, because we're both that way. But life of the party, and really enjoyed himself, enjoyed other people so much. That was just very much a part of his personality. His job was, as he settled in over the years, was in partnerships for technology software companies, because that's really the thing that he enjoyed most: personal connection, personal interaction, and working together with other people. That was how his career ended up really progressing into the place he felt most comfortable.
That's beautiful. When did you first sense that something wasn't right, and what were his earliest signs that you noticed?
What's really interesting, some of the things that I noticed probably a couple of years before we really got down to getting a diagnosis were missing things. Ironically, I'm going to talk a little bit about memory things at the beginning, but just missing things, asking something, oh, we need to go do this, and we'd just gone and done it, which I would look sideways at one of my children and they would look back at me like, did he just say that? I mean, we just did that. So that was really, really early on. And then as things progressed, what became most obvious was the language part of his challenges. And that was skipping words, using the wrong word, using part of a word like tuck for truck, or just calling things it. And I always, when I tell this story, I always say, now all of us are probably panicked now we have FTD, right? Because we can't remember the names of things. So all I did was just freak everybody out. But it's so much more pronounced than what all of us do just naturally as we age, that it was obvious that something else was wrong. Now, I'll go back now at the end of this story and come back and tell you that now I know that he had FTD. I can go back for the year or two before he got diagnosed and see behavior changes. Those were not the things that I thought were enough for us to go see a neurologist, but they were things that were really frustrating me and irritating me. And I thought, this man is having a midlife crisis in his late 50s, which is a little bit late for that, but making some really bad financial decisions without any input from me, loss of empathy for his neighbors. This is a man who truly enjoyed being friendly with other people and yet doing things that were bothering other people and not caring that it was bothering other people. I mean, just being very blatant, like, I don't care. It's my choice. I get to do whatever I want. And I'm thinking, who is this man that I'm married to? I really questioned it for those couple of years. I just didn't understand what was happening. I just thought, I mean, he's becoming a jerk. And I only see that after we got the diagnosis and I start to understand what are the behaviors within frontotemporal dementia that you start to see. And I've heard that from many other people where frontotemporal dementia comes with behavior changes. I've heard many people who are down the path of getting a divorce before they get a diagnosis because they think someone's just become a jerk and they don't understand why their loved one is so difficult to deal with and so insensitive and saying the wrong things and just being not who they thought they were.
Yes. Can you walk us through the misdiagnosed period or lack of diagnosis and how long it took to finally get answers?
So some of it, I would say, I kept my mouth shut. So I saw little things. I felt like something's not right. My husband was very sensitive to criticism. And so I felt like something's not right. It's not bad enough. Maybe I said something once or twice and got pushback from him that was very strong. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to let it go for now. So I probably let it go for a good year, excluding the behaviors, which I did not let go. Now I wish I had, right? But I was very mean about those. But the language things, I would say I let it go for a good year. And then one day we were out shopping for a car and he was together for me for a new car. And so we were in multiple showrooms talking to multiple salespeople, and he just couldn't carry on a conversation. He could not find enough of the right words to have a conversation. And I noticed it, but I'd been noticing this pretty much for a while now. But we got home and he went down into our den, and all of a sudden up the stairs I hear, "Nancy, will you come down here and talk to me for a minute?" And I said, "Sure." And I went down there and he said, "Something's wrong with me. I can't carry on a conversation. Something's wrong with me." And I said, "I think you're right. Why don't we go see a neurologist?" So that's how we got to, we're going to go see a neurologist. Now, he said he wanted to go by himself. I said, that's fine. So he went to the first neurology appointment by himself. A couple of months later, I found one in our local area. And he came back from the neurologist appointment and he said, well, he doesn't think there's anything wrong with me. He thinks I just have anxiety. But he's going to do a few things. He's going to do some tests, like check my B12, et cetera, et cetera. So I let that sit probably for a couple of weeks. B12 came back. It was fine. And I let it sit and let it sit. And then I just kind of went back to him and I said, this is not right. Something is wrong. And it is not anxiety. I said, so let's go back together to this neurologist and have a conversation. So we made another appointment with the same neurologist. We went back, we sat down. That neurologist did more talking than either me or Kim. My husband's name was Kim, did not ask my husband any questions. I was thinking, just listen to the man talk for a few minutes, but he was so busy talking to me, explaining about his fancy degree from Emory University and it was all about him. And he said, he's just got anxiety. I said, he does not have anxiety. I said, he might have some anxiety because he can't talk, but that is not something else that's going on here. No, that's what it is. It's anxiety. I said, okay.
Nancy, I've seen this over and over where the families are told anxiety and stress are the cost. And I also see family members like yourself being dismissed by the medical professionals because they don't take advantage of your knowledge that and your experience to share. If they did, they'd learn what was going on with their patient. Your husband wasn't normal.
Exactly. Who knew the baseline better than me, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and the fact that I came back with him and said, this just isn't right. So we stewed on that for another couple of months. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, and she had a neurological disorder. She ended up with ALS in the end,
Mm,
but she had had a neurological disorder, and it ended up going to New York to have to deal with the people at Presbyterian Hospital. She
mm,
says in Atlanta, she had a hard time getting diagnosed. She said, there's this one neurologist that now that I look back, he did all the exact same things as New York did. It was just much earlier, so he probably couldn't see the lesion on my brain like New York could. She said, so
mhm,
why don't you go give him a try? I said, okay. So we scheduled a meeting with him, went to his office. I explained to him about the anxiety diagnosis and that I wasn't comfortable with that. And then I shut up and he asked Kim questions. Kim answered his questions, and he talked to Kim. It wasn't 5 minutes. And he looked
mm,
me straight in the eyes and he said, he doesn't have anxiety. He's got aphasia. And I thought, oh, thank goodness. And I got home and I Googled aphasia and I thought, oh, this is exactly what he's got. It's awesome. I was so excited actually that we had a diagnosis. Now, he had to do additional tests because you can have aphasia from a stroke. You can have
mhm.
aphasia from a brain injury. You can
Yes.
have aphasia from dementia. So we had to go through a battery of tests over the course of the next month or so to eliminate all these other things. And you're left with, at that point, frontotemporal dementia, which is where it finally got to. But that was our journey probably for a good year and a half of behavior changes and language changes that I just sat on because I didn't feel comfortable that he was willing to accept that something might be
Mhm.
wrong. And then probably almost a year of misdiagnosis until we got the correct diagnosis.
Did he have primary progressive aphasia?
He did.
Okay. Can you explain to our listeners what that is and how it impacted your daily communication as a couple?
That is one of the most interesting differences between FTD, particularly primary progressive aphasia variant of FTD, and Alzheimer's. My father-in-law, who I also took care of, had Alzheimer's. So my husband had FTD for about 4 years before my father-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And the difference in the two was amazing, and mostly in the day-to-day communication. Part was really where the dramatic differences occurred. Part of it was language, because his expressive language was the most obvious thing that went. That was his ability to express what he was thinking or what his questions were. And there was a lot of what I came to describe as jibber-jabber. He would look you straight in the eyes and babble to some extent. A word would be here every now and then. And he would smile and talk to you and smile and talk to you and smile and talk to you. And then in the end, look at you like, and so what do you think about everything I just said? He had no idea that it was not perfectly good English. And so I'd say, oh, yeah, uh-huh. And he was content with that. And then we just keep going. And one time I can still remember he gave me this whole thing and blah, 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 blah. It was all jibber, jabber, jibber, jabber. And then he looked at me and I said, yeah, okay. And then he looked at me kind of shocked because I had said yes. And he said, you said yes. And I'm like, oh, I guess the answer to that question was not yes. The answer to that should have been no. But and that's so expressive language went first, but then receptive language started to go, which means his ability to understand what I was saying
Yeah.
was diminished. And that complicated things even more because then you really lose the ability to
Communicate.
give them instruction and so
Yeah.
on. There's a lot more body language involved
Yeah.
much earlier in the process with FTD than there is with typical Alzheimer's. So
Yeah.
it's a lot more smiling, showing it's time to eat, using your hands to show someone eating. In the later stages of Alzheimer's and really almost all dementias, you get to this point where language is impaired, both expressive and receptive. So these are all good techniques that will happen, but just much later in the journey with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia than they are with FTD. They happen very much up front in
Yeah.
the primary progressive aphasia world.
I just want to reiterate for my listeners, there are two types of aphasia. Receptive means people do not understand what you're saying to them, and expressive, where we don't understand what they're saying to us because it's all jibber-jabber. And when they get a mixture of both, it's very challenging. And you just went through it, the challenges you have, and how you have to change your whole way of communication. You use one or two words and you do a lot of miming, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
pretty good at it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure, I'm sure. What was the emotional impact of realizing your husband no longer recognized you as a spouse, and when did that occur in your journey?
So very, of course, with lots of different types of dementia, this does happen, but it
Yeah,
definitely happened in our situation.
yeah.
So as we got a couple of years into it, one day we're driving down the road and he says, how do you like, and I was the only one driving at this point. So I'm driving my car and he says, how do you like driving this car? And I said, well, I like it. And I'm kind of looking at him funny, like, okay, why would
Mhm.
you ask me that strange question? But I'm thinking, okay, he's got dementia, so whatever. And I said, oh, I like it. And he said, yeah, she likes driving it too. And I'm like, okay, that's an odd comment, but okay. Where are we going? I said, we're going to pick up a cake for your mother for her birthday. Her birthday's today. Oh. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're going to love my parents. They are the nicest people. And I went,
Aw,
oh my goodness, he has no earthly idea who I am.
yeah.
So I swallowed it and went about our day. We picked up the cake. We took it to his parents' house. I kind of whispered to his parents, he doesn't know who I am. Don't bring it up. I don't want to scare him, etc.
Yeah,
For some people, these kinds of things last for 15 minutes. Sometimes they last for a couple of hours.
yeah,
As far as I know, mine never went away. So that
yeah,
evening, it became time for me to take a shower, and I was still a guest. He could not have been nicer. Could not have been nicer. Just treating me like a guest in the home, asking me, did I
mhm,
want something to drink? And I thought, well, I can't go into the master bedroom and take my clothes off and take a shower. He's going to be wondering why his guest is taking a shower in his bathroom. So I had to gather all my things, come up to one of the guest rooms, and I just expected the next morning for it to go back to normal, but it
yeah,
didn't. And then it didn't, and then it didn't, and then it didn't. And so I slowly moved my things up to the guest room. And then he would ask if I wore my wedding ring. He was very upset. Who are you married to? Do they live up there upstairs with you? Where are they? So I had to stop wearing my wedding ring. But he could not have been nicer. That's really the truth. And I know a lot of people, that's not the case. The person is
no,
scared of them or tells them to go home. My husband was as nice to me as he could be, seemed perfectly content for me to live. Where do you live? I said, well, I live upstairs. I said, I'm here to take care of you. Seemed to accept that. And the only thing I would say is a few months into it, one of our couple friends came over to bring us lunch and et cetera. And of course, I made sure they knew he didn't know who I was. He didn't know I was his wife. At this point, I'm a familiar person he's comfortable with.
yeah.
And one of my friends looks at me halfway through the fact that we're eating. She says, oh my goodness, he's flirting with you. It was so cute. So anyway, he was perfectly happy to have me in his house and he was flirting with me. He was happy for me to be there. So anyway, it was cute, but I remember calling my friends. I was not earlier or later in the journey. This was during COVID, and I am sitting on the couch downstairs with him, and he is begging me in tears to find her. Where is she? They'll know where she is. If you'll just take me there, they'll know where she is. And I knew he meant
Yeah,
take him to my office. Of course, the offices were all closed anyway. But he
yeah,
was so desperately he didn't even know my name was Nancy, but he was trying to find her. And they'll know where she is. And I don't know where she is. And he was crying. It was making me cry. It was just awful because he wanted to find Nancy and he couldn't find her. And anyway, that was pretty dramatic. But I just sucked it up and got through that. But I called my sister later. I said, well, we've just had a big boohoo session together looking for Nancy. And I said, it's just horrible, actually. But
it's awful. Now, FTD often affects behavior and judgment. What were some of the most challenging moments you faced? You just shared one right now that it's heartbreaking, I know.
yeah. Accusatory stuff as well. Like
Yeah.
we were married for 35 years, so call this 30 years into it. So he said, I've never met your parents. There's something wrong with them. You're hiding them from me. You don't want me to know who they are. And just accusatory things like that, doing things that he didn't care what other people thought that were, I wouldn't call inappropriate, more just selfish and dismissive
Yeah.
of what other people cared about. And he was like, no, I don't care. I'm do whatever I want. I'm like, well, that's not nice to the other people. I don't care. Didn't care. And that's not him. That wasn't him. That wasn't who he was. He was a much nicer, friendlier person than that. So I think we had a lot of challenges with the behavior stuff connected with the frontotemporal dementia. I just didn't recognize the behaviors going with it until we got the diagnosis. Then all of a sudden I could appreciate the behaviors for what they were.
Did he ever become violent or aggressive?
Yeah, definitely violent and aggressive. Probably a couple of years. So probably maybe 3 years before he passed away. So later on, once we got to the more frustrating part of his journey, incontinence and doesn't know how to do things for himself, and a lot of frustration. A lot of frustration early on about not knowing how to change the channels on the TV. Also, frontotemporal dementia, you lose the ability to use devices much earlier than you do with other types of dementia. So not being able to use the coffee maker or change the TV channel or use the phone much earlier in his journey. And those were very frustrating for him. If he would just say, if you just show me what to do, I can do it. And of course I'd show him. And then the next time he didn't know how to do it either. So that he was definitely frustrated. But fast forward a couple of years, and I would say now he can't really communicate at all. So you hear a lot about behaviors being a form of communication. But if someone with Alzheimer's, you can ask them, are you hot? Does something hurt? Etc. When you have frontotemporal dementia, they don't really understand what you're asking, and you wouldn't understand what they were telling you anyway. So you are trying to be a scientist and an investigator trying to figure out what's happening. But the reality is it's just aggressive behavior. There's just no other, that you don't really have an explanation for it because you can't understand. So we dealt with a lot of aggressive behavior for about 18 months, and then it seemed to die down. And I was able to keep him at home through that, but believe me, it was a lot of work. It really was.
I have worked in senior behavioral health, and I had this young man, John. He was just a construction worker. I think he was in like 48 years old, had 5 kids, was their coach for all the kids, different teams, baseball coach and stuff. And I remember him so well because it's just a devastating diagnosis for a man that is so young, and it impacts the income of the family. It impacts so many things. And John was in the unit, in a locked unit, and a guest during visiting hours came to see somebody else. And John's talking to me, and in a moment, literally a second, he sees the guy out of the corner of his eye, and he lunged at him and attacked him because he was protecting me.
That's really interesting. I'm telling you, I leveraged, and a lot of people don't appreciate medications, but the way we got through that year and a half was with some sedatives. And the advantage I had of keeping him at home, I believe, is I used the sedatives as needed, but I was also able to monitor his behavior. So as it started to soften up after about a year and a half of this aggressive behavior, I was able to remove the sedative medication slowly over a few months, to where in the end, the only thing he was taking was something at night to help him sleep. But I had to give him a lot during the day for us to be able to keep him at home, or we would never have been able to keep him at home.
Well, God bless you, because I know that the behaviors can be very challenging, aggressive, they're sexual, inappropriate sometimes, but sometimes I know wives and children with a father that has FTD actually fear for their lives at times because of the paranoia, the accusations, and the physical. They just get themselves worked up. You're blessed because not only were you able to keep him home, but you could keep the environment calm as well. And
Agree.
when you have, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I'll tell you the other thing. There's been a lot of critique about Bruce Willis has primary and progressive aphasia, effectively. And there's been so much critique about Emma Willis placing him in a separate family home where they can go visit him, but she has young children. She is at the
Oh,
time like
yes.
11 and 13 or 12 and 14.
Yes.
People don't realize you cannot have, I could not have done that if I had young children at home. Number
No.
one, you don't
No.
want them to be terrified of their father.
Yes.
Number two, you don't want them to be in his way either. And so you do have to realize if there are young children involved, it's just not practical for them to be in the same house.
And so often they are. And people that are making judgments on Mrs. Willis because she's putting her husband in a separate home, they have no idea what she's dealing with, and they should be ashamed of themselves for making judgments when they have no idea how challenging and frightening it can be. God bless her that she's able to do that.
Exactly. Thank goodness. And then even incontinence, I think about.
Yes.
Incontinence is on its own with every form of dementia, a challenge, right? They don't know where the bathroom is. They think a chair is a toilet. And, she's not running around saying, my husband's pooping in the chair, because that's embarrassing. You're not going to tell your loved ones most embarrassing moments to the public. But at the same time, no young child needs to see that. Anyway, I feel for her for the critiques she got, because
I do
the things
too.
she's not going to tell people about the aggressive behavior. She's not going to tell them about incontinence. She's not going to expose his, personal.
Exactly. I mean, she's trying to maintain his dignity and his relationship with his children in some form or fashion. They don't need to see dad watering a tree, thinking it's the toilet. And they also don't have to walk on eggshells in fear that he is going to see something and respond in a way that is way over the top. And it's just too hard.
One of the interesting things my husband did, this is just, it's cute mostly, is this was pretty early as his dementia progressed, but he started to have what called mirror sign. He looked in a mirror and didn't recognize himself.
Yeah.
Well, he would jibber-jabber to that man in the mirror and have the best conversations with him. He'd point to him and laugh and giggle and jibber-jabber some more, and then pause like the other man's talking back to him. And then he would talk some more to him in jibber-jabber. And his best friend was the man in the mirror. And that went on for months. And then one day he was mad at the man in the mirror and scared of the man in the mirror. And that went on I had to take all the mirrors down in the house. Well, we have mirrors in the master bathroom, which is where he was living in the master bedroom, is up to the ceiling. So I had to take sheets and literally tape them up over the mirrors so that he couldn't see himself, because he was mad at the man in the mirror, and he was just furious with him, to the strange behaviors part. And then one day, a couple of months later, I see him pulling the sheet up, and he sees the man in the mirror, and he starts having a funny conversation with him again. I'm like, oh, I guess we're over that. Took off all the sheets.
That they could hit the mirror, they could break it, they could harm themselves. People just don't understand. In a split second, they can change from smiling to angry and aggressive and ready to destroy something in just a split second. It's awful and it's challenging. And what family members also don't understand is there is no place to actually put a person with FTD with these behaviors, during these behaviors. Nobody wants them. And it's really hard. You can try. Usually they end up in senior behavioral health, where they get sedated, and then the family is able to make a decision. But families oftentimes fight the sedation. But there are times with FTD, like you said, you were able to keep him home and keep him sedated for a period of time so that you could have some semblance of a normal life. But I know that one of the hardest things that any placement, when I did discharge planning and case management, is finding a place for these severe behaviors that occur because they have no control over it.
Right.
And basically you provided him with the best possible solution, and God bless you that you were willing to do that.
And I do feel like part of if you do end up with someone in care community and they're sedating your loved one, because that's what's necessary. And I hate to say it, people don't want to hear it. That's often what's necessary. You can't talk them through these behaviors. Like I try not to laugh when I see that on, oh yeah, we're no sedation. You should be able to be a detective and figure out what's wrong with their, so that that's causing these behaviors. I'm like, I wish that were the case. But
Yeah.
anyway, long story short, I strongly encourage you, if that is where it lands, to keep an eye as things soften up, because they will, as in the later stages of the dementia, and then try to help manage reducing that sedative so they can get back to at least being able to move around and be part of something.
Yeah.
And that was one of the advantages I feel like I had when I kept him at home, was I could monitor his behavior and start figuring out and we tried a couple of times. We were able to take his sedative in the morning off fairly first. And
Uh-huh.
then a few months later, we said, okay, let's take it out of the afternoon. And we took it out of the afternoon. And I wouldn't say his behavior was aggressive, but his frustration was higher, and he was very busy is the best description. He was just trying to pull the granite up off the countertops and just
Yeah.
very busy. And so after about 2 weeks of that, I'm like, you know what? We're going back on the afternoon sedative. So we did that. Maybe 6 weeks later, we were able to take him off, but we just did a little trial and error until we were finally able to get rid of it. But we did have to, I was fortunate, I think, because I was able to monitor it really closely.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you were able to control your environment, and that's the important thing. You can't have TV on, you have to have quiet music on. I mean, Lord knows you don't want to put anything, news or anything on, because it can really cause anxiety. And you have to limit the amount of people, the stimulation in the home, people coming into the home. And that's another whole challenge. It's very isolating and exhausting for family caregivers when they get to this point, because and really no facility has the ability to control they say they do with the environment, but when it's one-on-one, especially with FTD, you don't know what's going to set another person off. And while you don't want sedation, it's absolutely the only solution you have. I'm impressed, because you're not from a medical background. I'm just impressed that you were cognizant enough to introduce the sedation, the pills, and then try to figure out when and where you could remove them so that you could get through this period until he advanced to another stage. So that's kudos to you for that. That's very
Thank
impressive.
you. Thank you. I think the lens which I constantly look things through is, what would I want him to do for me?
Yeah.
And if it were me, and number one, if you're that aggressive and that struggling that much with having that much anxiety or agitation, you must be frustrated. You must be scared. There's something going on. And so I looked at it as, yes, it's safer for us if he's sedated more during this time. But for him, it's some relief, because he's very agitated, very frustrated. He must have fear behind it.
Yeah.
And how do I help him get through this period? And it's not a permanent situation. It's just something to help him get through it to the other side.
Yes, yes, yes. And I love your approach. I'm very impressed, because families either say no sedation, and then I'm thinking, well, how the hell are we going to do this when they bring them to senior behavioral health? Because like I said, one of the biggest problems we had is people said, well, because of young children, they didn't want to bring them home. So how do you place them? And that's one of the biggest challenges, because anybody with any untoward behaviors is really challenged. So you have to, as hard as it is, you have to allow sedation to occur to get through that period. And many times it's a way to get people placed in a safe environment until they get through that period.
Something else I want to mention real quick, just because they can't express themselves,
Yes.
please don't treat them like they're not there.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, I can still remember very far into my husband's journey, him having an incontinence activity where he had diarrhea, and it got all over the floor. I wish this had only happened once, but it didn't. But this is
I'm
one of the
sure.
first times where it was all over the floor. And I had a caregiver during the day, and I was his caregiver in the evening. I think she was here for this one. We were cleaning up. One of us had him in the bathroom, cleaning him up. The other one was cleaning the floor up in the house. And afterwards, he came up and gave both of us a big hug.
Aw.
I know he was
Aw.
so in his heart, he knew something was happening and he knew we were helping him.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I just want to make sure people realize they're still in there, especially
Yes.
with aphasia where they can't express themselves and talk. Please don't treat them like they're not there.
Well said. Yes, I agree 100% because try to look them in the eye when you're talking to them. And the other thing that caregivers don't understand is that they pick up on your anxiety, your stress, your anxiousness, and they respond in kind. And it's really hard, but I tell them all when I'm working with them, the wives or the children, take a deep breath and be calm. Think happy thoughts, smile. He may not understand anything, but he'll understand your movements, and he won't pick up on your, I can't stand this, I can't do this anymore, please behave attitude that you may have. Absolutely. And it's
A
about
hundred
dignity
percent.
too. Yeah, it's about
A hundred
dignity
percent.
too. Yeah, you gave him, you did it, you cleaned up after him and cleaned up and in a dignified manner. And I've seen family members yell, and even I've seen this, it makes me crazy. Professionals yell at a patient because they were incontinent or something. And I'm like, nothing makes me crazier than that because if they could control it, they would. They didn't ask for this to happen to them. So I think that, yeah, being kind and gentle and get rid of the anger and rage that you're dealing with. For caregivers, you have to let go of a lot of things and take 1 minute at a time sometimes to get through the day.
So true. And back to that, how would you want to be treated if
Yes.
you were the one who just had an accident all over the floor and
Yeah.
somebody's cleaning up after you and so on? Would you want somebody to be mad and yelling at you? Like you said, they did not do that on purpose. Good
Yeah.
Lord, nobody does that on purpose.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you do have to find a way. And I love your body language comment because that is so critical. It's critical for all people living with
Yes.
dementia, but
Yes.
it's really critical for someone with FTD because they can't really
Absolutely.
understand your receptive language. So that whole once you get to the point where you accept the situation as a caregiver, you accept the
Mhm.
situation, you accept where they are at this moment and what they can and can't do at this moment. And by the way, you don't think about what they were able to do yesterday or the week
Yes.
before. You have to be saying right now they can't manage that, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And you don't look at it as something that they're doing on purpose or wrong. You can get in a calm place. And something like that, you kind of look and go, okay, we got some cleaning up to do. And you put a smile on your face and you do not look at them with anger or frustration or anything that you're feeling. You have got to put your best actor or actress on.
Yes.
And you hit it the nail on the head. Take a deep breath, calm
Yes.
yourself, put on your best actress, and act like everything's fine. Because
Yeah.
how else will they have their dignity if you act like everything they do that's wrong is upsetting you? That's not helping them at all.
It makes me, I want to address anticipatory grief because people get angry and unhappy with what's going on and the changes in their loved one. And it's really grief. And it's long
Mhm.
before a person dies. When a family caregiver realizes that you're just grieving the loss of who that person was, you have a different perspective. And if you change your perspective, you change your life. And I think that when people realize that they're grieving the loss of the relationship, the loss of their lover, their friend, I have their supports, many wives that have young kids often aren't working because their husband is the provider. And all of a sudden, all of that has changed. So I understand why many get angry and upset, but it's grief and you really need to start talking about it.
Mm.
Did you have that kind of grief show up for you?
I did. I think I call it, Sue likes to call it drip grief. And I think that's true. It
Yeah.
just drips in. It's the loss
Yeah.
of, I found the loss, the first time that he comes out with his bathrobe on, you told him to run in and get dressed. We're getting ready to go to lunch. And he comes back and he's put his bathrobe on and he thinks he's dressed to go to lunch. It's like a punch in the gut. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, he doesn't know how to get dressed. Or he doesn't know it's my birthday, and you can tell him it's your birthday, but he doesn't understand that. Just a punch in the gut, a punch in the gut. And so there is that dealing with all those punches in the gut, especially early in your journey as a caregiver. But one of the most important things that you said is that, and I wish I could, some people never get to the point where they accept the situation.
Yes.
I watched my mother-in-law. She never accepted my father-in-law's limitations with his
Mhm.
Alzheimer's. And so she was a frustrated, stressed out caregiver till the very end.
Yeah.
But some people, if you can I wish I could accelerate everybody to that point where you accept the situation and you understand how to be present with whatever person and capabilities showed up today or this hour, and you accept them for who they are and you respect their dignity throughout the process. The sooner you can get to that portion, you are
Yeah.
shocked at the amount of calm that goes into your demeanor. And then the things that we're talking about here, how do you put a smile on your face, and how do you treat them the way you'd want to be treated? All of those things may sound crazy when you're in that frustrated caregiver, but once you get to the acceptance caregiver, those things aren't crazy. They're actually your natural reaction. You just take a deep breath, put a smile on your face, because you're like, oh my goodness, look what happened. How do I treat them with dignity? How would I want to be treated if this happened to me?
Yeah.
And it's actually not so hard.
No. And you know what? Again, I'm going to address change your perspective. You change your life. Your mother-in-law was looking at all the things he's no longer able to do. And she was grieving that and angry because he wasn't the person he was. Instead, she should have approached each day with grateful that he has what he can do now. And that helps too. If he can still feed himself, that's wonderful. If he still is able to put some food in, find food to put in his mouth and chew it and eat it, that's a good day. There are things, and what people don't understand, a person with any type of dementia, we hear about rehab, and rehab helps you make us better or get to a different baseline or back to baseline. And in habilitation is just trying to maintain what your abilities are for the time. And they slowly lose those abilities. His progression with his aphasia, the not able to speak in coherent sentences and then not to understand is one. You have to rely on changing how you react. Like you become a mime, making faces and smiles and things that even when it's hard for you, you just have to try to accept. But if you accept, I'm going to be happy for whatever they are doing today instead of worrying about what they've lost. It just has a different approach to your care.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes them feel better, but also it makes you feel better. By
Yeah.
default, a
Yeah.
smile on your face, by
Yeah.
default, it's going to make you feel better. If you take a deep breath and calm yourself, you're
Yes.
going to feel better. So everybody's better in
Yep.
the end.
100%. Now, what practical advice, Nancy, would you give spouses who are early in an FTD diagnosis right now?
I would say educate yourself on the early symptoms of FTD and what to expect and coming in phases. So you start to understand if they have primary progressive aphasia, they're going to lose their ability to work devices much sooner than you anticipate. So the more education you can do on to yourself so that
Mhm.
you're prepared for some of the things that maybe aren't your typical order of dementia challenges, the better off you'll be. There is the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration,
Yes.
AFTD, and they have a lot of great resources on their site, and it is a wonderful place to go. They have support groups specifically for families or caregivers of people living with FTD. So great opportunity to hear from other people and learn. that are ahead of your journey, so you can understand
Yeah.
from other people what kinds of things, should you be prepared for. And then the other thing, I say this to all dementia family caregivers, you want to be able to peek around the corner, but not too far. Don't get too
Yes.
caught up, because some of your frustration is you're grieving what they used to be. And
Yeah.
some of your frustration is going to be you're anticipating all these terrible things happening. And so you want to peek around the corner, but don't let yourself get down a rat hole of all the terrible things that could happen and that may or may not happen, and anticipate all of those and ruin what is happening in the moment. So stay as close to the moment as you can. Like I said, anticipate a little bit what's coming next so you can start to recognize it when it happens and support your loved one, but don't get too far down the rabbit hole if you can avoid it.
Nancy, thank you for sharing such a personal journey. I really appreciate it. I think my listeners will appreciate it because there's people out there right now that are in the very early stages, and listening to this, they may decide to ask the doctor to see if it's FTD, because many of our primary care physicians and even neurologists don't know the disease. And so many of them are misdiagnosed with anxiety or stress, and it's dismissed. And it causes delays in care and education. So, how do people find you, Nancy?
If you are interested in more just about being a caregiver for someone living with dementia, I co-founded a nonprofit called The Caregiver's Journey, and it's thecaregiversjourney.org. We have probably the tool that's used the most from us. We have a podcast every other week, but the tool that we're finding people most focused on is we have a page called Caregiving Roadmap, and it's the 20 steps of dementia family caregiving, and it helps walk you through what you need to think about now and what can wait until later. So I highly encourage people to go check that out, especially if you've got a new diagnosis of any type of dementia. It's a good idea to go figure out what you need to do at the
Yes.
beginning and what can wait until later.
To my family caregivers out there, you are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself. Practice self care every day because you are worth it.